Today we're going to be taking a look at Sony's new 28mm f2 lens. It's nice and small, relatively light, 200 grams, and it is pretty well priced at about $450. We're also going to be taking a look at one of two new Sony conversion lenses that attach to the 28mm. This one is a 16mm fisheye. It's a little heavy, 415 grams, but it's nicely built. Has a nice petal-shaped lens cap, and when you remove the cover, they snap together real nicely. What I'm going to do today is compare this fisheye to a Rokinon 14mm equivalent on a micro four thirds format to see how similar they are. The one that is for the Sony FE camera is about the same price, and it's even a little bit heavier. And of course, it does not have the autofocus capabilities or the metadata that the Sony converter attached to the 28mm has. So we're going to take a look at the 28mm compared to the 28-70 at 28 and the 16-35 f4 at 28mm and see how they compare. Now the 28mm at $450 is a pretty good deal for a prime lens. That compares to $498 for the 28-70 kit lens, and pretty favorably to the 16-35 f4 at about $1398. This is a Zeiss lens, very nice lens, but a lot more expensive, a lot pricier. The 28-70 f3.5 to 5.6 is 295 grams compared to the 200 grams for the 28mm. Okay, let's take a drive and take a few shots to compare. I'm also going to look for a good subject at a car show to compare the fisheye lens and the Rokinon 16mm equivalent on the Lumix GX7. Okay, well, my purpose this morning is to compare the new 28mm lens to some of the lenses I already have and how they work. The first lens I'm going to compare it to is the 16-35 f4 Sony lens, and I have it set at 28mm, and now I'm switching to the 28-70, and I have it set at 28mm. Now these should look virtually the same, and I must say the 28 is nice and small, the 28 f2. Now obviously, because this is an f2, we're going to take it down to f2, and we're going to run it up to a 1600th of a second, and we're going to run it up to f4 at a 500th of a second. And let's go ahead and run it up to f8 at 1/25th of a second. And let's go ahead and take it up to f16. And that shows it a 30th of a second. Okay, now the real interest to this lens is the fisheye teleconverter. So let's take a peek at what that's going to do for us. This is a fisheye lens, and one of the things you need to keep in mind with a fisheye lens is that you need to keep the horizon relatively near the middle of the frame, or you will introduce a lot of distortion. If that's your goal, fine. Now you can see we're getting some distortion in the stacks. They're curving in towards the frame, and the railing off to my right is being fairly heavily distorted. Towards the middle of the frame though, it looks pretty clean, and we introduced the plants here in the foreground, so you have a nice full foreground, midground, got a lot of interest, and of course in the background is the infamous Moral Rock. What I want to do is compare this lens to the 16mm to 35mm lens at f4, which is much more rectilinear. And let's take a peek and see what we have. Now you'll notice, if anything, the smokestacks at the power plant appear to be falling away from the center of the frame. Same thing with the poles on the top of the ship here. They seem to be receding, and actually they are just a little bit receding. They are curved in towards the top of the ship, and they do tend to fall away. But the stacks are definitely vertical. Now I like to go to car shows. Some of the fun things to shoot with these converters are cars.
So thin.
The fisheye does nice things to their proportions. So this is the Lumix GX7 with a fisheye working on lens. Manual focus. As compared to the A7 Mark II's autofocus with the converter. So, what are the conclusions I have drawn? The Sony 28mm f2 is an excellent lens. It's small, it's light, and 1 2/3 to 2 stops faster than either of the zoom lens. If you need a lens for low light, it's an excellent option, especially considering the price. The fisheye converter is a relatively cheap way to obtain a quality fisheye lens for a reasonable investment. However, remember, it's a specialty lens that you won't use every day, nor is it light enough to supplement a rectilinear wide-angle lens for lightweight travel plans. But again, for a modest investment, you get a fisheye lens with autofocus and metadata, like any other Sony lens, for only $299. So, in summary, I like the 28 pretty well. If you like primes, this one's a winner. If you want a fisheye, this is a good way to go. You get all the Sony features. It feels like a Sony fisheye lens. It won't replace a good 16mm rectilinear lens, but if you want that special effect, as you saw on the car grill, this does a good job. It has a nice effect. It's not for everything, and although you get a little more coverage with the frame, with the fisheye, I'm not sure it's particularly usable because that which is on the extreme edges is extremely distorted. So the rectilinear lens provides you a much more accurate description of what you're looking at. So that's my opinion of the 28. I like it. I like primes. I like it. It's fast enough for me to get into a dark room and get some good shots, and it will be in my travel bag. Thanks.